Hello and welcome to the Crossing the Line podcast. As per usual, I am the human Charlie Cullicutt, and joining me, as always, fellow Homo sapien Oliver Rednall.
Good afternoon.
And with us today, a voiceover actor who has lent his voice to some of the biggest animated shows and video games out there. Death Note, Gears of War 5, Guardians of the Galaxy, Abominable, F is for Family, Call of Duty, Final Fantasy, Avengers Assemble, Spyro, and many, many more. If you haven't guessed, this guy has worked. Trevor Devall, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. You know more about my career than I do.
Excellent. So you should be asking those questions. We'll give you the answers, shall we?
Trevor, jumping in very quickly, you've worked in obviously animation and video games. What is the major difference with working those as an actual actor? Like direction-wise, is it different? Do you have to lip syncing, things like that? Can you talk us a little through that kind of process?
My God, you know something about the topic. My God.
I just read it just down here.
Yes, there are significant differences. The video game world typically, not always, you record by yourself most of the time. And in animation, the goal most of the time is to have the whole cast recording together. That doesn't always work. And certainly last year, over the course of the dreaded pandemic,
we don't talk about the pandemic.
Yes, we do. Don't mention the war. We were recording remotely, obviously, so that couldn't happen. Although it did happen on Zoom. We had group sessions on Zoom, which was interesting. A bunch of voice actors, like 15 of us, all talking over each other, makes for a nice,
excellent, yeah,
not at all chaotic
clear
experience,
and
but
concise.
Yeah.
Zoom crashed that day, didn't
it? So most of the time in animation, we try to record as an ensemble, as a cast, whereas that happens very rarely in video games. In terms of like lip syncing and stuff, there's two kind of principal forms of animation that we do. One is what we call prelay or Western animation, which is like, The Simpsons, for example, or F is for Family, since you mentioned it, where we record the voices first and then they animate what we do. And then the other, of course, is dubbing, which is typically anime, right? So there'll be, the show is done in Japan, it gets brought over here and we redub the voices, and that's all lip synced, and that is typically by yourself in the booth as well. So that's kind of the biggest difference. Is animation, you strive to be together. And video games, not so much.
How do you find that with video games if you're doing it by yourself? You're playing, I say playing because I play video games, but like Gears of War 5, the whole point of that is they are working together to fight against the Locust, or the Hive in this case. And there are just moments where surely being together and having that kind of animation style of recording would be more efficient, surely.
You're right. And actually on Gears, we did that quite a bit towards the end. I don't know whether that's because the producers decided, we got to get these three together. But when we did come together, and it was mostly for the motion capture, because we did our own motion capture for the game, which was awesome. That almost never happens in my experience. They always hire some other like physical type to do the thing, and us nerdlings are just in the booth doing the voice. But this time it was both, so that was fantastic. But it also gave us an opportunity to actually physicalize our characters with the other actors, like a movie set or something crazy. So that was pretty cool. It's always better in my experience when you can actually work with a human being rather than words on a page. But that said, that's the name of the game. That's our job. So our job is especially in a video game situation like Mac, who I played in Gears. Mac? Was that his name? Yeah, sure it was.
We'll go with that.
There's a scene and you can see the responses. You can see what the other characters are saying, but you just have to imagine what they're going to sound like and respond to it in sort of real time. It's just, that's the job, kid. That's the job.
Well, because, you must have those moments in animation, particularly where, with video game, you've got an idea of what they're saying, but in actual animation, they have said something a certain way, which will then spur on a different reaction from you that you had originally programmed in yourself.
Right, which is why you can never be too married to any one particular interpretation.
Sure.
Because you have to be able to not only, react to a different interpretation that the other actor might have, but also the director might say, actually, the intention behind the line is this. Oh, okay. So you really gotta be fluid. You gotta think on your
But I imagine that's also why in video games you have to do like 10 of the same line, don't you? You have to do one where you're tired, one where you're angry, one where you're been running a bit.
Sort of.
Sort of.
The quality video game producers
Excellent.
understand that their scripts are designed to be a certain way. So they don't want to have a million different things that they have to then choose from. They have to have a pretty secure vision in their head of what the thing is supposed to sound like, look like, whatever the case is. And then it's our job to flesh that vision out. Now, I always try and give the director more. I always try and, like, for example, if we are doing an ABC, which is 3 takes in a row, I always switch it up every time. So if the line is, quick, we've got to open the door, then I might go, quick, we've got to open the door. Quick, we've got to open the door. Quick, we've got to open the door. Right? So it's just little variants that they can go, oh, yeah, I didn't think about the third one. Actually, that fits better. Or whatever.
Well, it's also putting the stress on a different part of the sentence every time, which seems to be kind of how you've worked out those ABCs there.
Yeah, I mean, I do that instinctually, but that's, a different inflection point of different words can change the meaning, can change the intention, the whole bit. You don't want to get too Captain Kirk about it because things get weird if you do that. But,
on something like Gears of War, how long from when you start recording to when you finish?
Oh boy. Well, on a video game like Gears, because it's so huge and it's done in so many different phases, it took us 2 years to record that.
2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's not every day, obviously. That's like from the beginning, they'll be like, okay, so the first thing we're going to do is a bunch of combat chatter. Okay, so I go in. I don't know what the hell's going on in the game. I don't have to. It's just, quick, grenade, get down, whatever that is. And then you do a bunch of those pages and pages and pages of, I'm hit, or all that stuff.
And grunts and stuff like that, I imagine, as well.
And, stuff like that. And they'll do, in animation, we do something called a wall of library, which is a library of all these different effort sounds that they can just plug into whatever they need. In video games, it's obviously very specific most of the time. Okay, we need you to shimmy over the low wall while under fire 3 times, 3 different ways. Okay. For example, right? And you just visualize it in your head and you do it. What was the question? I've already forgotten.
This is like a live version of a video game,
brilliant.
right? It's like the theatre version. It's like, here it is.
Did you ask the question or did I?
Yeah, it was, how long does it take?
That was
How long
it.
does it take?
Yeah.
How long does it take? Well, my response to the question takes longer than the recording.
Sure.
Yeah. So then we'll do that, and then we'll come back like 2 months later, and they'll say, okay, we've got all these scenes. And then you spend a week recording all the scenes. And then a month later, they say, okay, we got to come back and get some pickups for the effort sounds. Okay, great. And then six months later, you come back, and now they've got initial visuals, and you're ADRing, you're adding additional dialogue or sounds to an image that isn't finished yet, but it's getting there. Then you get a sense of what the game looks like. Oh, okay, great. Now we do that. And then, okay, there's new scenes. Okay, great. And then 6 months after that, okay, we've got mocap. So we're going to fly you to this place, or if you're already in LA, we're going to drive you to this place, or you just drive yourself to the place. And then you do the scenes there, and you wear the silly black suit with all the balls, and you walk around with balls on your face.
Looking exceptionally attractive for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And what's the difference between motion capture and performance capture, if there is one?
That is a difference. Motion capture is literally just the physicality of the thing. What I did is performance capture. So what we did is basically we shot the scenes just like you would on a movie set, except that we're dressed in the black suits, and there's a bazillion cameras all around that are recording in real. I'm sure you guys have seen it, right? Like the balloon man on the screen that's capturing the motion. So that's exactly what it is, except that motion capture typically is specifically just physical movements. Performance is also performing the scene. So years and years and years ago, one of the very first video games I ever did was a game called Sega Soccer Slam, where we played like a bazillion characters. And one of the things we got to do was the motion capture for that, but we could only do so much because they had professional soccer players. Sorry, professional football.
I was about to say, let's have proper language on this.
Yeah, I don't want to screw it up for you guys over there, right? Sorry about that. But they had professionals come in to do the real, like the crazy kicks and stuff like that, which obviously I'm not going to be able to do. So we just focused on the character stuff. Did I answer the question? I don't even.
It's just one of those where at the moment we're a bit like, okay.
It's like, I think our earphones are broken.
Yes.
Stop.
As you stop talking. That's brilliant. Okay. And so when you're doing something like mocap, do you find that brings out different styles to what you originally had planned, or
and do you do the mocap first?
It depends on the game. With Gears, it was sort of a weird combination where we had recorded a bunch of the scenes already, and we were like, "Yeah, that's awesome. That's totally the way it's gonna go." And then we go in for the performance capture, and they're like, "Actually, the scene's changed. Okay, now we're gonna totally change everything." And that's fine because you just roll with the punches and you do what's necessary. But when you physicalize the character with your whole body, which is not something in the voice world we very often get a chance to do for obvious reasons. When you physicalize the character, all kinds of new stuff comes out. When you have to move and walk across the room as the character rather than just say the words or make the effort sounds, it's a whole different thing. I don't have a ton of experience with performance capture, to tell you the truth, because again, they normally look at me, he's the voice guy. He doesn't sing in front of the microphone. We let the professional people.
You stay in your lane, kind of thing.
You stay in your lane, yeah, exactly. So it was a bit of a new thing for me, but I loved it.
And did you go into performing as an actor or as a voiceover actor? Because
as an actor, yeah, I was on stage from the tender age of 5 years old. Actually,
that's very young.
So I was going to be a theatrical actor, as in an actor in the theater. Here in LA, theatrical means something different. Up until right after high school, when I started to discover filmmaking, and and directing. And in university, I was a director, the stage director, but also making films. And then I moved to Vancouver in BC, where the big film industry was. And that's when I fell into voiceover. Didn't even know it was a job. Didn't even realize it was a career. Now, mind you, this is back in the heady days of 1998, so things were a little different back when you were just whippersnapper.
The thing is, people listening to this on the podcast will be like, who the bloody hell are they talking to? They've just got like 7 guys on the... We're on 7 at the moment. Let's see if we can get to 20.
Yeah.
I guarantee it. I guarantee it.
Excellent.
What's your favorite voice to do? Do you have one?
In this exact moment?
Yes.
Ever?
There are so many. It's very hard for me to keep track. Sometimes they just come to say hello and then recede into the background.
You sound a little bit like, Robin Williams when he's doing the genie.
Robin, hey. I was a huge, gargantuan Robin Williams fan growing up. I remember the first time I heard him, I was like, you're not kidding, I was like 5 years old or something. And I listened to his 1977 album, Reality What a Concept, which is him on like Quaaludes. So not a good thing for 5-year-old children to be listening to, but boy, him and Monty Python utterly formed my sense of humor. They formed my sense of performance, everything. So if you're detecting a bit of Robin Williams, that's probably just because it's in my DNA.
It's just in your DNA at the moment.
Yeah.
We were introduced to you by one of our guests, Jennifer.
Ah, yes.
Who came up because we were talking about what was the difference between a geek and a nerd. And we were talking about how I kind of straddle the line of geek and nerd, and then we started talking about Dungeons and Dragons, which I'm aware that you run your own YouTube show about.
I do.
I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Certainly. It's called Me, Myself, and Die, and it is... it's me playing role-playing games by myself alone in my room using these tools called solo RPG tools, things like the Mythic GM emulator and all of this stuff. These tools were designed for people to play a game like D&D utterly by yourself. So the emulator serves the role of a games master, and you roll dice to interpret events and apply those events and interpretations to your characters. So I know all the guys in Critical Role. I've worked with them over the years here in town.
My heart at the moment is going, I'm a gigantic fan. I'm on season 2.
Good.
Series 2
good.
Gone.
Yeah, they're good lads. They're good fellas, good gals and guys and such.
Well, you would have worked with Laura Bailey on Gears as well, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely. Around that time, this is several years ago now, me and a couple of other folks were like approached by a rather large company in that world, which I'm not at liberty to disclose, unfortunately, at the moment. And they wanted to do something something similar-ish to Critical Role. So I had this idea, and I was like, okay, we're going to do this and this and this and this and this. And of course, we're a bunch of voice actors, so naturally it didn't work because scheduling was all over hell. So finally, when that died, because we couldn't make the schedule work, I thought, the only thing stopping this show from happening is the fact that I can't get a bunch of actors in a room together. Wait a minute. I don't need other actors. I can do it all myself. And so I thought, I'm going to make a show where I literally do everything, play all the characters. And I thought, oh, wouldn't that be hilarious? No one's ever thought of that before. Cut to 3 months later, when I've got thousands of subscribers, all going, actually, no, I've been solo role-playing for years. And then now you are our king. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know you existed. But they do. And there's huge amounts of them out there that do this solo role-playing stuff. And I did it because I thought, wouldn't it be funny to watch me look at me dance with all the characters? But as the time went on, I was like, actually, this is pretty legit. Like, this is pretty fun. And to be able to shoot it the way I do, because I have like a 7-camera setup and music and effects and miniatures and the whole bit. So I go all out on it. I just finished my second season, just released the finale a couple weeks ago. First season was 22 episodes. Second one's 18. The third one's going to be coming up in a little while. I'm switching up the studio a bit, so I'll need to get that going. But,
and do they follow a storyline? Have you written that, or does this machine make it up?
The machine makes it up. So basically, I have no idea, and that's a hugely important point. When I sit down to do an episode of the show, I have no idea what's going to happen. Zero. So So if you look at the very first episode of the first season, I literally start from scratch, randomly creating a character. I know nothing about who I'm going to play. I know nothing about his stats, his class, so to speak.
You don't get any control. You don't get any control over
you
apart from your choices, obviously.
Right, but because you're both the player and the GM, you can seize control whenever you want. But for me, I don't want control. I don't want to know what's going to happen. I want to as closely emulate the experience of being under a tyrannical DM as possible. And that means everything is up to random factors. So I start off randomly creating this character who turned out to be this guy named Simon, who was a ranger who was on the run with a half-orc friend of his. And then the very first session, his best friend gets charged with a murder he didn't commit and gets killed. And Simon has to flee into the wilderness all by himself. And that's where it all started. I have no idea. I was like, okay, I guess this is what's happening. But what's interesting about that first episode is that the main character in a ostensibly D&D game, where a lot of people are like, oh, it's all about the story and the heroism. No, my guy gets his ass kicked, handed to him, almost dies in the first episode. And people are like, what? I'm like, yeah, welcome to old school, bitch. You know what I mean? So, and then it just went on from there. And this whole cast of NPCs, in fact, in episode 2 of season 1, there was an NPC who was an antagonist of Simon's who emerged randomly, whose name was Arn Kalapunki, and he was sort of this weird, almost Scandinavian bounty hunter type of guy. He turns out to be the main character in season 2. And now the whole season 2 is all about him. So it just all emerges organically.
See, this whole thing baffles me because, it's amazing to hear. But so I DM a game, and I've been doing it for nearly 2 years now. It's a homebrew of the Fable games. If you ever played those at all.
Okay, yeah.
And I write the story. I do all the painting of all the miniatures. I come up with all the maps. I make sure everything works. But then, I had no idea that this kind of world of a computer-generated story existed at all. And now I feel I can scratch the itch of actually playing for once in my life.
Yeah, well, check out the show, seriously, because I think it'll open your eyes to a lot of things, especially newer players, newer GMs. When they see this show, they're like, I had no idea, which is good. That's great, because there are so many different ways. I've been doing this for 40 years, kid. Believe me, I know. I've seen it all. But I've been told by many, many viewers that this show was like, dude, I had no idea this was possible. I can go out and do it alone. I'm like, well, you can. That's not what I'm advocating. I'm just saying that there are so many ways to fulfill the creative impulse when it comes to the game, and this is one of them. There's a whole huge community of people that do this, and then they share and they do it in, they'll play the game, and then some of them will write it out in prose, and they'll write it into like a story or a novel or something. And then there's other people that just journal it, or there's other people that record it on their audio recorders, right? Mm-hmm. I live in Hollywood, so of course I have to have a big production. So that's what it's all about. But check it out, because It's pretty good.
So that's me, myself, and Die for all
Yes.
our listeners out there. Which I mean, easily just as much as you, obviously. One day we'll get there. Wow, Ollie, do you have any?
I'm enjoying listening to you talk
Yeah,
about
sure.
it.
I mean, like for me, I feel like I could talk about D&D for an awfully long time, but I feel that might slightly overtake the point of the subject matter. Out of interest, what's your character? What was the character that you've just finished with?
So the character I finished with in the second season was Arn. He started off, as I said, as an antagonist to the main character in season 1, but over the course of season 1, he becomes allies with him, and they become very, very close. And by the end, he realizes he has to return home to the north, to the Ironlands, because there was a game called Ironsworn, which is a solo RPG designed specifically for solo that everybody told me about right at the end of season 1. And I was like, oh, I should check that out. So I checked it out. I was like, oh, I'm going to use this for season 2. So it was all about Arn going home to the far forbidden north where he had to undertake a quest. I had no idea what the quest was until I started season 2. And then, brother, it was a doozy, believe me. But that's what that was all about. And it was really cool. And that system was really wild too, because the creator of the system, I did an interview with him because I did this little interview series as well, little supplemental series in between seasons. And we talked about his game, but he also helped me design Arn for that system. So it was kind of cool. I had the creator's blessing, if you will. So it was kind of neat.
Excellent.
Did you play video games before you became a voiceover and actor?
Well, there was Pong.
Right.
Well known for its story-driven narrative.
Yes, exactly. Or Adventure on the Atari, where you were the square with the arrow and you would go around hunting the duck. I don't know if you remember that. But it was supposed to be a dragon, but it just looked like a duck to us.
Or D&D First Edition, I imagine you were going to say.
Yes.
Yeah. Of course, not a video game, but...
well, I didn't get into video games until there was video games to get into, which was sometime in the early 90s mostly. But I remember like falling in love with the old X-Wing, which was a flight simulator, except you were in the X-Wing and doing the Death Star run and stuff. And these days, when you look at the graphics, it looks like it's just like lines. It looks very primitive, but oh my God, it was the best thing ever. And I don't have a ton of time for video games these days. I work in more of them than I play, to the point where I don't even know, like people say, oh yeah, I heard you in this game as this character. And I'm like, oh, great.
Was I good?
Was I good? Yeah, do tell. In fact, even as you rambled off the litany of some of the stuff I'd done at the top of this show, I was like, I don't recognize half that stuff.
Like you're still waiting for a paycheck from him. You're like, what's going on here?
I could have just made most of it up. Yeah.
That's true. I wouldn't have known any better. So
I turned up to a booth one day and they told me to say some words.
Pretty much. Yeah. I was super green when I started voice acting, man. I had no idea, like none, zero. Didn't even know to put the headphones on. Didn't understand that when I was in the booth that the director who was on the other side of the glass couldn't actually hear me. And I couldn't hear him unless I put the headphones on. So I was very green.
So what was your first job then?
My first job was back in the heady days of 2000, show called The Lost Continent, which no one's ever seen, tragically, because we recorded 26 episodes in 3 months, and then the production company ran out of money, which really sucks because it was really cool. It was a show about it was a classic 80s adventure, Saturday morning cartoon kind of thing, because it was about this guy named Jack, and his father, who's a super scientist guy, gets kidnapped by the villain and taken to this island in the Pacific where people are trapped, and they're trapped from all eras of Earth's history. So I played Sir Geoffrey de Belvedere, who was a 12th century British knight, and he was Jack's sort of right-hand man. He was sort of the Little John to Jack's Robin Hood. And I remember I got the job because it was only the second edition I'd ever done for voice. And I walked in and I decided to play him as a sort of boisterous kind of Brian Blessed type, a little bit, like that, like the large mouth and the gregarious nature and things. And at the very end, I threw in this big boisterous laugh, whatever it was. And that got me the job because the producers told me like months later, oh yeah, no, when you did that laugh, we all looked at each other and went, oh, that's Sir Jeffrey. I'm like, oh, great. And that started my whole career, that one laugh. But yeah, no one ever saw it, which sucks because it was really cool.
I imagine you were able to take stuff from that in order to audition for further things. Did you have to audition much, or did you just have kind of voice? How does an audition for a voiceover work then?
Well, back then, yes, back in the old days, when the earth was cooling, you would go into the studio and, you would have your audition sides a couple days before, and you would prepare it. You'd go into the studio much as you would for any other audition. These days, of course, it's all done from home. It's all done with MP3s. You just record it yourself and send it in, and then they cast you based on that. In Vancouver, especially, where I cut my teeth for the first 15 years, so to speak, you had to audition for everything. It didn't matter how experienced you were, how well known you were, you still had to audition, which was very, very annoying. It's different down here. Once you're in the club on the team, it's a little different. They kind of throw you jobs, which is great.
Nice. Yeah.
But I still audition every day for stuff. It's not, because you can never know everybody. Even if you're like famous as a voice actor, like, I work with Tom Kenny all the time, SpongeBob SquarePants, or Billy West, right, from Futurama and stuff, and John DiMaggio, all those guys. And everyone knows who they are, but for bigger projects, producers think that their stuff is really important, and so they still have to audition. And it's like, you're bringing Billy West in, and you're not sure what he's capable of? Are you serious? Okay, fine. I guess he'll audition then, which is kind of... well, whatever, it is what it is. Yeah, so you still have to audition, and I had to audition a lot. But the good news is that in this world, in the voiceover world, it is a very small world, after all. So when you do sort of come out and make a splash in the scene, and you emerge, like phones start ringing, like, oh my God, there's a new guy in town. Have you heard this guy? He's really good. And next thing you know, you're being asked to come in and do this and this and that, the other thing. And that's how it happened for me back in the old days.
So
and that was 21 years ago.
And is that a case of, it's a very small community that's very hard to get into? Or
yes,
it's a very small community because there are not lots of people who specifically want to do that?
Oh, God, no. First one. Everybody wants in. Few are skilled enough or talented enough. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to come out and say it. That's the truth. You got to be the best. You got to know exactly what to do. You can learn a lot of the skills, but you can't ever learn the core talent. You have to have it in you, or else you'll be a middling performer at best. I never tell the truth. It's so liberating.
What else can we get him to say?
And living in Hollywood, that is the place to be for video games and voiceover at the moment, or for a long time?
Yes and no. It certainly was before the pandemic, but now what has happened is that people have realized you can largely do your recordings remotely because the technology is such. And so now, like, most of my colleagues have left. Most of my colleagues have like a diaspora across the country, living in various places.
Is that because LA's...
Diaspora? I never know how to pronounce that. So yeah, they're all over the place, and it seems to be working just fine. And if you're trying to get in, you kind of got to be in the city. You got to be in the place. But once you're established, you can kind of be where we like. Mostly, there will be certain people that would disagree with that. There'll be certain producers I work for like, what? What are you talking about? Don't tell them that. That's crazy. You have to be here. But, yeah.
We find out 2 days later, 2 days after releasing this podcast, Trevor mysteriously disappeared.
Yeah. That's right. Blacklisted. Yeah. Trevor who? No, we've never heard of it.
We don't know this person.
And is the voiceover industry, is it like what people think of Hollywood? Is it the same industry, or is it a separate
No, if it was the same type of industry as the rest of Hollywood, I would have been out of it a long time ago.
Oh, wow.
I shouldn't say that, but I will, since I'm telling the truth to the internet. Always smart for the career.
Really clever. The internet never takes anything out of context either. Like
exactly. So let's get into politics and religion. The truth is that the voiceover communities in both LA and Vancouver are some of the greatest people you could ever hope to work with. They are a bunch of weirdos and wackos that don't really take themselves too seriously because, hey, we're just making cartoons here. That said, they're the best in the world, and they're super professional, but they know how to poke fun at themselves, and they know how to have a laugh, and they know how to I don't know. they're great. Like they're my family in many, many ways. And it's been an honor and a privilege to work with the majority of them. So yeah, it's not at all like the rest of Hollywood.
When they bring on like a big star for a video game more as a name, how is that taken among voiceovers who have been doing it for years? You know, real veterans of that. How is that? Does that sit well with them? If you're
I could
happy
give
to
you
answer.
I could give you the answer I would give everybody, or I could give you the truth.
We're on the truth. We're doing the truth. Remember
Apparently,
that, Trevor.
stupidly,
Tell
I've
us the
decided
truth, tell Trevor.
Some celebrities are good at it. Some of them get it, which is a nice surprise. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
I remember a video game came out a couple of years ago, a very big Bungie game, and was voiced by a certain character from Game of Thrones, who then got re-recorded over by Troy Baker, I believe.
That does happen.
Yep.
Yeah, that has happened numerous times. Honestly, though, when celebrities are cast, they are cast because they're celebrities, not because they're particularly good at this specific type of work. As I said, some of them are. Some of them really are. But that's not the common outcome. The common outcome is that they're brought on board because they are who they are, and that's Hollywood, the star power. More and more celebrities started to take our jobs in animation and video games as the years have gone on, because the celebrities have twigged, oh, wait a minute, look at this easy money we can make. And it's annoying. It's annoying because, you know, I like to call the voice people the workhorses of Saturday morning. You know what I mean? Like we're down in the voice mines. We're working hard. We're getting our hands dirty, so to speak. I mean, let's not be silly. We don't actually get our hands dirty, but you know what I mean, metaphorically.
Everything's very sanitary.
Yeah, it's annoying, and we've all dealt with it. We've all been replaced by celebrities. We've all lost jobs to celebrities that then when we see the show, we're like, really? That's what you went with? Okay. I'm sure the kids really care. You got some guy from reality TV. I'm sure they're buzzing on the playgrounds about that. Yeah, I'm sure that's what's going on here. But whatever. Hey, that's how the system works.
And by the sounds of it, you're never really out of work. So yes, it sucks that you didn't get that job that you may have wanted, but there's always going to be more jobs, because it's not like we're running out of content, are we?
I would like to believe that that's true.
I'm telling my truth, Trevor.
Certainly, I've been lucky in my career because I can play a multitude of characters. I can play a bunch of varieties of different characters. So that that allows me to be what they call a utility actor, someone who can come in and play all the characters whose names you never know, right? Like on F is for Family, that's my specific job. Michael Price is one of the greatest guys I've ever worked with, or for. I met him on Lego Star Wars because I play Emperor Palpatine on Lego Star Wars, and we became really close over that experience. And when he got F's for Family, he's a Simpsons writer, multiple Emmy winner. But when he got F's for Family with Bill Burr, he came to me and he said, "I need you," and I'm like, "I'm yours." But he needed me to play all of these characters because he needed one guy to fill out the rest of the town. And I'm like, okay, so me and Debbie Derryberry and Mo Collins, we're basically the whole town of whatever the town's called, Russville, I don't remember. Which is awesome. That is a huge honor. And I remember the first time, because for the first season, this is back in 2014, maybe. I had just got here. I'd only been here about a year. And they screened the first few episodes at the big, like, Cinerama Dome in Hollywood or somewhere like that. And you drive into Hollywood and you're at the red carpet for this animated show that you've done, and you're sitting in the crowd, and there's Vince Vaughn in front of you sitting beside Bill Burr, and, you know, in the voice role, Kevin Michael Richardson, who is he played Groot to my Rocket, and he's a god among men as far as I'm concerned when it comes to the voiceover. And you're sitting with all of these people, and you're thinking, and you're hearing your voice come from multiple characters on the screen, and you're thinking, what am I doing here? Like, how did some kid from Canada wind up here? I think they're about to discover that I don't really know what I'm doing. I should leave quietly. I should get out of here. So it's a weird experience. And then, this is one of my favorite stories of all time. I'll keep it short. The second season, we were screening at Netflix, at the Netflix building in Hollywood. And the president of Netflix is introducing the show, and he's like, oh, well, you know, it's good to see Bill here and Mo and Debbie. And he's basically pointing out everybody in the cast except for me. And I'm like, that's fine. Who am I? Who am I? I'm some guy. But as I'm watching the episodes, I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not some guy. I'm that guy and that guy and that guy and that guy. What the hell? But I was a little choked by it. But I was like, doesn't matter. I'm not a celebrity. Who the hell am I? Whatever. This is Hollywood. I'm just some guy from nowhere. Who cares? But we get to the reception. Bill himself, Bill Burr, comes up to me. He goes, did you fucking hear that? Right? That guy? He mentioned everybody in the show but you. I'll tell you something, Trev. I'll tell you. I'm going on the podcast circuit, going on Rogan next week. And I'm mentioning your fucking name because that's fucking bullshit. I'm like, you're a god among men. And sure enough, he does. I get this call from my comedian friends back home going, dude, Bill Burr is talking about you on Joe Rogan. I'm like, yeah, well, of course he is. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird, isn't it? It's
Ollie
weird.
and I
Has he ever heard you do that impression?
Yeah, I did it at a table read once, and he didn't know it was him. I said, Bill, I got a good idea for this character. Oh, yeah? Okay. Well, I'm sure it's going to be good. So yeah, so doing the thing, right? You know? And he's like, no, that's good, I guess. I don't get it. You doing someone I know? No, Bill, I don't. No, I don't know what that was. He is the warmest, most generous. He is the greatest guy to work with. And he is so, when he sees a group of voice actors, I'll never forget this, dude. The first session we're doing, and there's a bunch of us in the studio together, and he's producing the show. So he's in the booth and he's watching us back and forth between these characters. And he comes in, he was like a kid at Christmas. He was just beaming. He was like, how do you remember how do you keep that straight? You guys are unbelievable. And we're like, oh, thanks, man. That's hilarious. But he was just like, oh my God, you could hear him thinking, this is going to be the greatest show ever, you know? So, yeah, he's awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, we had Bill Burr on the podcast record.
We should just cut the camera and say we had it.
You just kind of, like, for all of the kind of the pictures of our episodes, we have a picture of us smiling and then the nice cutout of the other person. For this one, it's just going to be us being like,
yeah.
like jaw dropped.
Is that something you have to work on for a long time, or are you a quick mimic? You are quick.
Yeah.
And you've always been, ever since a young kid, it's something you've known you can do. Yeah.
Yeah, I got my older brother. He used to do an impersonation of what was his name? Jackie Stewart. Jackie Stewart was a Scottish race car driver and commentator back in the old days, in the 70s. And he used to impersonate him at the dinner table. He'd say things like, "Hey, pass the mustard and ketchup." And so he'd say, "Oh, it's a great day for a race today. We've got mustard and ketchup. Oh, look at this. Mustard pulls out in front. Oh, but ketchup's catching up. Look at this. Oh, no, and he bursts into flames as he rounds the corner." And I would listen to him do that. And then one day I imitated him and everyone's like, "Oh my goodness." And I thought, ooh, people laughing at my silly voices. My path to power.
This is how it begins.
This is how my will domination. Yeah.
God.
It's great to hear that, because obviously the way we think about it is North America's kind of a bubble and they don't know people from outside of America. So when you say people like Jackie Stewart, I'm like, oh yeah, cool. That's really cool that you do that.
Well, it's different in Canada. Like,
yeah.
Growing up in Canada, we had the BBC, and as I said, I grew up in Monty Python, so I was exposed to British culture, Irish culture, just generally European, French, all that stuff from a young age. So I knew about all this stuff, but when I would talk to my American brethren, they mostly didn't know what the hell I was talking about. I'm like, how deprived you all are down here.
The story is, I'm sorry. I'm just really sorry.
Yeah. And since I'm Canadian, I got to say it like 3 times. Eh? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Geez, so sorry you guys don't have any culture or whatever down here, you know?
Would you say you had quite a strong Canadian accent? I can't detect it too much. When I'm listening to you, no.
Trevor doesn't know what his accent is anymore.
No, he's lost it. He like wakes up and then he guesses. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go with this today.
No, I don't. I have mostly when I go back home, or if I'm on like a Zoom call with the boys back home, they don't have strong. Well, I guess they do have. I don't imagine you guys would detect their accent. but I would. And anybody probably in the States. The funny thing is that Americans are notoriously bad at detecting accents that are not American accents.
Yeah, they're like, "Are you Australian?" And I'm like, "What?" Because we don't talk like, you know, it's either like
Pip,
we either talk
here's
like,
a cup of tea.
yeah, that's it.
etc.
It's like because we talk colloquially, they think we're Australians.
Yeah, that drove. Yeah, dude, believe me, I did this session years ago. Oh my God, I couldn't believe this. We were doing these characters. It was a Highlander. Remember the movie Highlander?
Yes.
We were doing a cartoon.
There can be only one.
Yeah. Sweet Rachel, you always know. What else was this? It's a kind of magic. That was the other one. We were doing this Highlander special, and we're all playing these Highlanders, these clansmen, right, in the Highlands up there, doing the thing, the background voices and things like that, you know, and we're going around and we're doing a call outs and things like that, and you know, like the whole thing, right? You want to sound good. And the director, who was this young, sort of cool, hip guy from LA, he says, wow, you guys are really good. This time, give me even more of that sort of Irish Cockney thing. And I was like, ha, ha, ha.
Oh, dear.
Oh, wait a minute, you're serious.
Dear.
Like, he had no, I'm like, Ireland, Cockney, Scotland, there's no, okay, all right, whatever. It just blows my mind.
Goodness.
Is there any accents you struggle to do, like you just can't quite get?
There used to be, for me, the holy grail of accents was South African. That was I have no idea how that works. And then one day I was literally hanging up my laundry and I realized I was speaking with a Johannesburg accent to the laundry, which is a weird place to find yourself in. But I was like, this is really weird. Right there I am doing the wash, right, hanging the washing here, now like that. And so I go to work, right, that afternoon, and I'm talking to my guys, right, back in, we're doing Guardians of the Galaxy at that time. So I'm at the studio and I'm talking like this, right? Guess what I found today doing the wash? Quite weird. And one of the other producers goes, you can do that accent? I'm like, I guess, I don't know. Right there, they cast me as Claw for Avengers.
Really?
Right there, on the spot.
Fuck.
So I became Claw.
Sorry, my mind at the moment has just been like, this is fucking mental.
Yeah. It's been quite a ride, let me tell you.
So I did have a question earlier. You mentioned, so going through your IMDb as well, you've done Palpatine, you've done Rocket, you've done Claw, as you do there. Do you find yourself, or do they ask you to kind of mimic what the movies do, or do you just do your own thing, or like, because Emperor Palpatine obviously has that kind of execute order 66.
Yeah, it's interesting because with the Palpatine thing, they started, this was years ago when we did the first, it started with the Yoda Chronicles. That was the first official Lego thing that they did for Star Wars. And so they wanted voice matching. And none of us had any idea what this was for. We just saw, okay, all your big characters, Han Solo and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Palpatine and the Emperor. And so I did, a voice match to, Lord Vader, prepare to do the thing, or whatever the thing was. But when we got to the session and we realized, oh, this is a comedy. This is fun. So now, the Emperor went for this, the sort of like, sort of a combination between Mark Hamill's Joker and Stewie Griffin. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so he just evolved into that. But when we did the Marvel thing, they didn't, at that time, Marvel still had Marvel TV Animation and Marvel Studios. Marvel Studios did the movies and we were on our own separate thing. So I think the best example of this isn't mine. It's Mick Wingert, who played Iron Man in the later seasons of Avengers. He does a killer Robert Downey Jr. Killer, like perfect. But in the show, they always ask him to dial it back because they just want a hint of that, but they don't want to be actually copying that. They don't want people to be thinking about the Marvel Studios product. They just want to get a little hint. And so it was really fascinating watching him work because, I can't do Downey Jr., but he has sort of that, that kind of SoCal sort of way of speaking, right? And Mick could just like you close your eyes, you're in the room with Downey Jr. It was unbelievable. But he had to pull back. With Rocket, when I auditioned for Rocket, I knew nothing about Guardians of the Galaxy. I had no idea. I hadn't seen the trailer at the time because it came out. We were auditioning before the movie came out. So I had no idea what this was. They just said, yeah, he's a talking raccoon with guns and he's angry all the time. And so I just kind of did like an angry George Costanza kind of thing. And that was that. It's nothing at all like what Bradley Cooper does. You know, he's got a whole sort of New York thing he's doing there, you know, whereas mine, not so much. Mine was different. So yeah, they don't tend, I mean, that said, we do voice matches all the time. They'll say, yeah, we really want you to sound like this guy or that guy or whatever. I just did an audition for a project where they wanted not a match, but the feel alike. That's what they call a feel alike, is when, yeah, you kind of sounds like it could be that guy, for John O'Hurley, who played Jay Peterman on Seinfeld. And if you are one of the undead, Elaine, I'll find out about that too. They wanted that. So I was like, okay, well, that's in my wheelhouse. I can do him. But they didn't want an exact match. So yeah, again, long bloody answer.
From where you are now, is there anything you're particularly ambitious about something you want to do, like a Grail project you may have not have worked on yet?
The whole reason why I came to LA, which I didn't want to come. I didn't want to come to LA. I had no reason to whatsoever. I had a great career in Vancouver. I literally stumbled into an opportunity and I thought, okay, all right, I'll go down for 6 months. I'll do a guest on a Disney princess show. I'll go home and get on with my life. And then I can say, oh, I lived in LA. And that'll be that. Well, 8 years later, I came down here because I thought, down here, I had at the time, the opportunity to work on high profile projects. In Vancouver, we were kind of the service industry of the voice world. You know, there was very few shows we did that people knew about. There were some, like My Little Pony was kind of a big one with a lot of folks. Ed, and Eddie, that was slightly before my time, but that was a huge thing here in the States. But most of the time, like, I could rattle off a number of shows that we did in Vancouver and no one's ever heard of them. But here, well, Lego Star Wars, I'm Guardians of the Galaxy, Marvel's Avengers, F is for Family. So that was awesome. But honestly, I kind of feel like I've gone as far as I can go, realistically, because the fact is now, especially with celebrity culture sort of encroaching
on your territory
and taking over, more and more of my colleagues, myself included, are being kind of relegated to the outer darkness, are being, pushed to the, well, you just play the secondary characters now, which, hey, pays the same. What the hell do we care? But we do care, because it's like, we worked, I was in this business for 20 years. And to be kind of, oh yes, well, no, we're making way for celebrities. It's insulting, but like I said, it's the way it is. I've got so many other things on the go. I don't really give a fuck, to tell you the truth. Like, I love my work, and I'll always love to work with these people, especially the local directors here and the local producers. They're the best, man. I love them all. They're just so great, so much fun. I just got off a session with some of the guys for F is for Family, and they're the best. But they're not the ones making the decision to cast celebrities. It's the higher ups, it's the marketing departments. I'll tell you something else. You mentioned Abominable. I had a great compliment from I won't say who it was, but from someone fairly high up on the Abominable staff. And they said to me, point blank, oh, it's so nice to be working with the real voice actor. And I said, on behalf of voice actors everywhere, thank you. And they said, no, seriously, like they said, of course, we love our working with celebrities, and it's all great, but they said, we don't make those choices. That's handed down from on high. You must use this celebrity. But she said, you guys are so solid, and you just get it, and you don't need any direction from us. You just get it. And I'm like, that's the job, miss. That's the job. So that was a huge compliment to hear that. Not because she wasn't denigrating celebrities. She was rising us up to a higher level, and I thought that was really nice.
And is that something that does differentiate you between those celebrities? Is that you just have a greater understanding of it? You just really know what you're doing, voice, taking direction, not even needing direction, giving variation.
Yeah, totally, dude. Like, again, even I'm not denigrating the celebrities. It's just that this is a world they don't know, most of them. So when if I was thrust into the on-camera world, I mean, the real on-camera acting world, where everything's the world of the very small, when a little twitch can convey so much, I don't know what the hell I'm doing with that. I'm big, I'm huge, that's not going to fly on CSI Miami, you know what I mean? So that's not my world. I look like I obviously don't belong there. So it's the same thing, just the other way around. If I spent 20 years in the world of the very small, doing very little and barely saying the words and barely showing any then I'm sure I would be considered a big star for some fucking reason. But yeah, Can I swear? I guess it's a little late.
It's too late
I
now.
screamed fuck
It's
earlier,
too late
so
now.
please just say whatever you want.
We're beyond.
Yeah.
We're beyond.
Oh my god! And so I did have a question earlier. You said that obviously you're going to like additional characters where you are doing background people. Do each of those count as individual people? Like, would you get paid for each single character you do there, or do you just get paid as like the umbrella?
The day.
Additional
Well,
day
it
rate.
depends. It depends. Normally, yes, you do get paid per character, but it's different. There's typically the SAG-AFTRA agreement here, which is our union. If you're doing standard sort of animation, the typical agreement is you make your payment for the session, and then if you do a second voice, you get a little bonus, and if you do a third voice, you get another bonus and stuff like that. In Canada, it is per character, but the characters are delineated based on how many lines of dialogue they have. So if they have 10 or more lines of dialogue, they're called a principal character, and that's in one pay category. If they have between 2 and 9 lines of dialogue, that's an actor role, and they get less. And then if you've got 1 line, you're an incidental, you don't get paid anything. Unless that incidental is your second incidental, in which case it becomes an actor role. Anyway, it becomes an exercise in accounting, frankly. But it's about, in order to make money, I've done very well here, but it's about quantity of work. It's about always working on a variety of things. That's why when people say, oh, so do you just do cartoons? Well, mostly, but I do everything. I do, commercials and video games and cartoons and promos and industrials and anything that comes along. I'm like, great, yeah, sure, do this. So it's a body of work, and I like to think that my career is a body of work, because if you look at the stuff I've done on IMDb, it's quite a variety of different things, which I'm very proud of. It's nice to have been able to play kooky sidekick comedic characters and then horribly dark psychotic villains and everything in between,
You mentioned such a large body of work. For people who are maybe just starting off and who want to get into voiceover themselves, what would you kind of recommend? Do you have any words of wisdom that you would like to give, or anything that you would tell them to do specifically?
Yeah, get into it for the right reasons. Make sure that you're getting into voice work because you can't do anything else. That sounds weird, but you have to get into it because you love it and because you're good at it. And you think here's the thing. I used to teach quite a bit, various workshops and things around, a lot of places. And I think the biggest bit of advice I can offer is what I tell those students, which is, I ask them, what is the difference between a professional and an amateur? What is the difference? And they come up with various responses. But the difference, in my estimation, is the amateur comes to work and says, what can I get out of this? The professional says, how can I contribute? And that's the difference. The professional is about the greater whole. The professional is about, how can I lend my services and skills to this project and make it better, rather than what do I get out of this? How does this benefit me? So all you Gen Zers, take that to heart. Not everything's about you, you little shits.
It's like a hostage video.
Yeah.
Like, you just received this, like, damn you. We always finish up asking each one of our guests the same question. That is there a film you are ashamed you haven't seen?
Oh, God, so many. Hilariously, I'm watching something right now, which I've never seen. Somehow I got through the 70s and 80s and 90s and 2000s without ever seeing this, and that was Rocky. I had never seen Rocky.
Really?
Yeah.
Never seen Rocky. So we're up to Rocky 4 now.
Oh, good.
And, I keep expecting the sequels to get dumb, and they don't. They're
Rocky
still
4 is great.
Rocky
I love
is
Rocky
solid.
4.
It is a really
Totally
good
solid.
collection
Rocky
of movies.
5, maybe not so much.
It starts to go down a little bit.
Yeah.
But
Rocky 4 is great.
Rocky 4 has just got one of the best montages and music pieces, music scores in the world.
This is what people are telling me. And I'm like, I can't believe it's been so long. Or check this one out. First time I saw It's a Wonderful Life was this past Christmas.
Me too.
Same here.
Me too. I had not seen it before, and we were going to do an episode talking about like Christmas movies and all that, and I just hadn't watched it, and I was blown away. It's brilliant. Like,
It's great.
There is a reason people talk about that movie, because it is good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, I said that as a
Seal of approval here, just if you didn't know.
We should get like an animation that comes up with me just going like slapped against the screen.
They'll just get a celebrity to do the voice. So
yeah,
sorry about
unfortunately.
that.
Sorry. Yeah, the high ups. The
I'm
high ups.
available.
Yeah, Trevor, would you be? No. You'll do our voices as the secondary characters.
So there are many many like monuments to popular culture that just I skipped over for some reason.
Sure. Okay.
That was a good one, though.
Those are two very good. And although you did watch one of them, so Rocky's great answer. Sticks in the vault. Great. Well, Trevor, thank you so much for coming on. I feel like I could talk to you for hours more, but I know you've got a busy day ahead of you. So thank you from the very bottom of our hearts for coming on. And to all our viewers for coming on and listening to us, please make sure you like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz, and be with us next time. Thank you again, Trevor Devall.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.